We're all set. Does anybody have to take a quick break? If not, we'll go into my program. I'll do screen share. Let's see right here. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, is that a PowerPoint you're going to show?
Yes.
There we go.
That's
Very good.
Fantastic.
Okay. What this is a section of building Nashville Road Part 2. And what I've done in Part 2 are the things I've learned building the railroad. And I've broken it down into specific areas. And I can pull out bits and pieces of these different specific areas and not have to show it all at one time. So today what I'm going to show is the way I remounted the ground throws from the switch out to the fascia. And I kind of go through it a couple of, if you can hear the dogs barking, you have to forgive me. I can't blot them out. Chihuahuas like to bark. And they all start singing same time like a bunch of drunks. So we'll start on this. And if you have any questions, please stop me at the time and we can discuss it just so it's not lost. And I got to go back and try and figure out what your questions are. So fascia mounted ground throws here are a couple of them mounted, and I'll show you how I did all this. This is an earlier picture or group of pictures I took when I took this switch that had the ground throw mounted here and ran the ground throw out to the fascia here. So step by step. So first thing I did was take the marker and I marked where the throw bar is. And this is just an Atlas switch. And I marked the center point between the rails. So I knew exactly where it was at. So you pick it up and here it is. And those are the marks that I made. And then I added these two, and this is where I'm going to drill a slot into the plywood. And the reason I like to drill a slot all the way down through is that if anything gets jammed up in the, scenery or anything, ballast gets jammed up, it has a chance to drop through the, and away from the switch so it doesn't mess up the points. So I use two drills. I don't have the specific size, but you can use whichever one you want. And this, I'm not sure if anybody knows what they call these, but it cuts sideways. So it works out for opening the slot. So I drill the two holes. And then I take the slot cutter, if you want, and I go in at an angle like this. And I like to go at an angle so that the upper portion, it kind of slides down into the slot, and you'll see why. So there it is open. Here's where I like to have that angle. And the reason is because you'll see that the rod sits in a tube, and I have that sit right over here out in the open. So no scenery, glue, or anything can go into it. But at the same time, anything gets hung up around here, it'll drop away into the hole. Then I mark the lines of where I want to score and cut a V slot in here for the rod, for the tube. And if it's hardwood, it's a little bit harder. I don't do this anymore, except for using for cleanup near the fascia. And I'll show you a little later the other tool I'm using. But for this, I cut the slot with this knife. Then I drill. You want this this hole to be just below the height of the plywood on this side. And I have a piece of board with a slot in it, so it would fit down over the fascia. And on the one side in here would fit on the board, and on the other side you could mark a little line under it, and you'd know where the level of the board is, the plywood. Hope that makes sense. I use aluminum tubing. Brass is okay, but it's hard to bend. Aluminum tubing bends very nicely. So you could actually have the switch here, and for some reason you couldn't run it out to here, you could bend it and run it out to here. There's some points, I think you'll see why I point that out. Okay, here it's sitting over the hole, so nothing's going to get into this tube. Does that make sense? I hope. You also see here that I spike the tube in place. Later you'll, well, I don't think I have any picks, but I hot glue it now and it works really well. And then I just kind of trim the hot glue level with the plywood around it. So here I'm cutting off the aluminum tube, just a short distance from the fascia, maybe 1/8 of an inch or so. And here the tube is in place. Okay, this is a heavier wire than I use now. And to be truthful, I was going to get the size of the wire in the tube and I forgot to. So if you have any need, just ask me and I'll get the information for you. I have to add that to this program.
Andy?
Andy, is that piano wire?
Yes, this piano wire, I buy 3-foot tubes of aluminum and I think it's 3-foot piano wire. And Ron, did you have a question? Somebody was asking.
Andy, I use .039 piano wire and it works perfectly.
Oh, okay, thank you. I'm not sure what I do, but the big point I want to make here is make the wire sloppy in the tube. Don't make it a tight fit, because anything gets in there, it's going to jam that up. Where if it's sloppy, it doesn't matter lateral movement of the wire. It's the fore and aft movement, and because it's wire, you're not going to get much of a slop sideways in this tube. Hope that makes sense.
Andy, at this point, you can basically make the statement, "Don't ask me how I know this."
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
So you put the straight end in that's going to come out to the fascia, and you've already got this bent. And you can bend it. You can have this as high as you want, and then you nip it after. So here the wire's coming out to the fascia. And what was I trying to show here? I guess that's it. The wire's there and everything's in place. All right, then you drop the switch back down, the throw bar over the the Atlas has a hole already in there. But if you need to, drill a hole where you want the throw bar, and then just slowly drop the switch down over it. And then you'll see how I made these a little bit later, but these I make out of 1x2. I think it's number 1. I can't remember what they call it. Menard stocks all this stuff, and really nice wood. And I'll show you, like I say, I'll show you a little more on that. And then the ground throws just drop down on top. I used small nails at one time, but Ron found some super small and really good little screws. Was it cigar box banjo, Ron?
Yeah, it's a website where you actually go for parts to make your own guitars and banjos. And he had little, I think there were number 3 screws, very tiny, about the size of the nail that you're showing there.
Right, very small. And yeah, worked out great. So I've gone to that, but nails will work also. Okay, now Cedar Hill Yard rebuild. A Cedar Hill Yard was not scenic or anything, but you can see I had all the ground throws mounted. And what I did was, further pictures here you'll see, I ripped everything up, but I marked, I knew where the ground throws were at. And so I went back and added the ground throws out to the fascia and then relayed the track. And this kind of shows you what I'm doing. So this is what I use now. It's a roto zip.
Yeah.
But also, and I think I've got a box a little further down, Something else you can buy fairly cheap, about 30 bucks, I think it is, at Harbor Freight. And that works really well. And it's a Formica router, I think it is. It puts the edge on the Formica countertop. Yeah, that's it right here. So that is what I use now. The RotoZip was okay, but this is better. And here you can see it shows you, setting it up, and you just follow the marked line you've got for the slot. So here you can see I've zipped them all. And thought I had one here where I could show you it curved out a little bit. Oops, curved out and came back a little bit. I'm getting ahead of myself here. So I've got those in place. Now the next thing is to put the tubes in. And here you can see I'm still tacking them. Tacking works fine, but I like the hot glue better. And here I've got them all in now. You can see. And this is a close-up. And it shows you, you've got a bit of a curve to this one because the track is actually not parallel with the fascia. So I just slight curve. And it's really easy to do with aluminum. I highly recommend aluminum over brass. Okay, now the wires are all in place and the switches are laid back down. And then I took the 1x2s and I cut them to size. So this one will hold 2 of them. This one will hold 5, and here's a single one right here. And the way I get the curved here, I just take a can or something round that you can set in to just mark it the way you want. Set it on top and just put the line in there, and then use a saber saw. And here they are after they've been sanded. And then I use it's either 3 or 3.5 inch screw to go through those and then through the fascia and into the plywood. And this is the size drill I used, and this for countersinking them. So I drilled the hole, and if you've got a bigger one, you might put two holes in, maybe even 3 for an extra long one. And then I countersink it. You can see the countersink. And then I paint them. I usually put the screws in because it makes it easy to handle while you're painting them. And then I just butt them up against the bottom of the tubes. And remember that I use a kind of I guess you call it a jig. The one side, it has a slot, so the fascia can sit in a slot while you get the proper height of the plywood, then mark it over here. You can actually see that line, that little line there and there. Those were the lines that I marked with that jig. And then I just drilled in the holes, and you can see just the top of the tube touches the hole or the line, and it lines it up pretty good. And then just run your screw in, and that screw will go into this plywood, and I don't use glue or anything. And it's a really good, solid attachment.
Andy, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Do you have a bandsaw that you use to cut the smooth curves? And
No, I just,
what type of sander do you use?
I just use a saber saw, and then I've got one of the Harbor Freight. It's a belt sander, and then on the side it's got a circular sander. I think they're 60, 70 bucks, something like that, but it's come in handy. But you can also, if you have a belt sander, you can use that to just work it around the curves, just.
Your curves look very precise and neat. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was quite happy the way this turned out. And then I would fill these after and then repaint them. And like this, I don't think I got a picture of it repainted.
Now the other thing you mentioned that you just grab a can to make the curve, do you use different size cans or just whatever's handy?
No,
or
no,
they're not
because
the same radius.
yeah, it's the same radius. You know, it might be a little different. What I usually do is I get the curve I want, and then I might use this one to get all the other curves. I'll just lay it down over the other blocks that I'm working on. But you know, they're not all exactly the same. But as long as they come up looking this way with a curve, you can't tell.
Yeah, my impression was they were always exactly the same. So
Yeah, I mean, you know, that one's a little further away from this, and that might not be the same curve as this one. It actually looks a little different, but
Yep.
you know, it just doesn't show. And then I mount the ground throws, and again with the nails, and we use the screws. Okay, any questions up to this? Because I go into something else a little bit, but not much.
But one thing about the hardware you talked about, another company is called RTL Fasteners. It's online, and they have a lot of small hardware also if you're looking for something unusual.
Oh, okay, that's good to know.
Andy, what do you cut the piano wire with? Because I keep ruining my tools.
Yeah, I've got a pair of well, they're just wire cutters. They're you know, it look like pliers, but they're used for just nipping wire.
Andy, if I may,
Yes.
for model railroading, Xuron, Xuron, sells a tool that's specifically made for cutting hardened wire.
Yeah.
Because you use your rail nippers or anything, and you will ruin them the first time you take a nip.
Right.
But if you use the hardened wire cutters, you won't have a problem.
Yeah, and I don't know where I got mine. I've had them for a long time, but they just worked really well. So
Thanks.
let's see. Okay, hard to reach switches, and I've only got a few more slides here. But this switch up here, I couldn't figure out how to mount it on the fascia, and I didn't want to keep it up here and have us leaning in to line it. So a tube and a plastic tube and wire will do it. I actually got this stuff from Howard Humpyard Purveyance, and I use it in the pasture terminal for all the switches. But I had some extra, so I glued it here on the pad and just have it come around and out to this ground throw, and it'll line this switch up. Later, I'll have something covering this so you can't see it. But that would, you know, that'll take care of it, does a nice job. But one thing I had to do was put an O-scale ground throw here because it wasn't lining the points all the way. Now I'll have to do that in a switch like this. I'll probably have it come out to the back, go around 180 degrees and come out here. Same with these two, go around, curve, and come out here. And these even higher, same thing, go around and come out to the fascia. So there's different ways of doing it. And I think it makes a big difference in the scene, getting these ground throws away from the scene, but also people are not reaching in and lining them. They can do it down here. So, and you know, once you get all your scenery and everything in, that's a big plus, not having hands reach in. So
Andy,
that's, yes, sir.
Yeah, one question. Is that a plastic tubing that you use? Or I'm not quite sure I understand the kind of.
I'll show it to you here. I notice it's the next section.
Oh,
It's not part of the ground throws on the fascia, but
right.
it's pasture terminal switch towers. It's a Humpyard Purveyance Armstrong levers. And you guys have been here, recognize these. They're at both ends of the pasture terminal. And they connect to the switch through the wire and tube. And that's what we were talking about here.
Okay.
So these, you can see the tightness of the curves in that they allow. The only problem with this setup, let's see, I don't have another picture. The only problem with this setup is that the wire is so fine, there's a lot of flex to it. And it has to go up through the the 3/4 inch plywood.
Mhm.
So when it goes up through the switch point throw bar,
Mhm.
there's flex. And
Mhm.
I've had trouble trying to make them work well enough that I don't have to worry when I get my scenery down. It might start causing a problem with when I have scenery in there and the points don't throw. So what I'm looking at a couple of different things in the pasture terminal. Maybe to put the slow motion switch machines on those, and then have these hump yard purveyance connected somehow to the switch, through a toggle or something. So you'd still control the switch machine with these, but it wouldn't be with a push pull tube through, into the switch. It would be through electrical connection somehow to align the switch.
Andy, I have another thought. Are you familiar with the radio controlled radio RC control cables?
Yeah.
Yeah, the aileron cables.
Yeah, I fly radio controlled airplanes, and Sullivan and Dubrow make
Yeah.
several different types of.
Okay, and they're more solid than these?
They make some with like a 256 wire that goes through it.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
And that's
Yeah,
what
that is
also
something
going
to
with a
look at.
440 wire.
The ones I used, it came with a tube, and then instead of a wire, it was a piece of plastic that the cross section was like an asterisk. There were all these ridges,
Yeah,
which
that's
I
not-
think,
that's-
Mhm.
that's
I
not
think
right.
keeps it from binding, but
Yeah.
there was no give to that, no slop whatsoever. It, if you moved it 1/8 of an inch on one end, there's no way it wasn't going to move 1/8 of an inch on the other end.
It might be worth looking into for.
Andy, I can tell you one source to look at is for my levers to control the switches. I use the Fast Tracks, what do they call it? Super Frog kits, and they supply the RC control cables as part of that. I mean, you can buy them separately from Fast Tracks.
Right. Oh, I am not aware of those. I'll have to look and see.
Mhm. Yep.
So, oh, that's good to know. Thank you.
Mhm.
On a different subject, but Fast Tracks is coming out with a new crossing kit.
Mhm.
And he's going to have it in all the popular sizes that you can get, Atlas and all the rest. And they are beautiful. I'm going to replace all my crossings. Not that I have that many, but I'm going to replace them with these kits. I'm just hoping they're not too expensive, but
Mhm.
it's still, even if it's 30, $40 a crossing, considering the few crossings we actually have, I think it'd be worthwhile to have them. So,
Yeah, Andy, thanks for sharing that video that you sent out from Fast Tracks, because I tell you, I continue to be impressed with that company. They make some really great stuff.
they do. Yeah, beautiful work. Tim Warris is quite a guy. He's
Yep.
got a hell of a sense of humor, but I tell you, he
Mm.
dives into this stuff and does beautiful stuff. So
And they cast their own switches too.
yes, yep, yeah. So and just so you know, Jeff Ryman loaned me a 4.5 jig, and I'm rebuilding all my my Atlas number 4s to
Mhm.
Fast Tracks 4.5,
Mhm.
and I
Mhm.
really appreciate, Jeff, that you did that. I haven't had a chance to get to them, and I told John, if you guys ever need that jig back, let me know. But it's sitting with my other jigs, and I'm looking forward to start replacing those Atlas number 4s. They're quite crappy, but with the upgrades, I think they'll really be nice. So let's see, was there anything else I had to? I was thinking of something else I was going to tell you, but I'm not sure what it is. So that's basically my program. Does anybody have any questions on this?
That was a lot of work, Andy. You did a yeoman's job in getting that all done. I had one question about that router tool that you used. Can you vary the depth on that thing?
Oh, yes. Yep.
Okay. Mhm.
See, get close to it here. Yeah, that can be,
Okay.
see, it's on
Adjustment.
the other side.
Mhm.
There's a lockdown on it. And you
Yep.
loosen that up.
Mhm.
And then if I'm not mistaken,
Mhm.
there's a geared, something geared that you can rotate to bring this up in or drop it down.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Very nice.
it's
With
really,
my luck, I cut right through the plywood.
well, yeah, that's why you can adjust it to wherever you need it.
Right. Very nice.
The thing that'll get you with all of those is you can't cut the groove all the way up to some wall. Like if you got to
Mhm.
take that track out because this thing will hit the track and stop the trench about 2 inches short of it or so.
Mhm.
Right. What I did buy was drill bits that were about 16 inches long or so.
Mhm.
And if you can control them, you can run them up that slot from the fascia, outside the fascia, run them in there and upside. I've actually drilled underneath tracks that I didn't want to lift.
Oh.
They were already, they had all this scenery and all that. My problem now is this whole area is completely finished as far as all the scenery goes.
Mhm.
And now all these switches have to be rebuilt to fast tracks, quality switches.
Mhm.
So they all have to, that number 8 will be replaced to fast track also.
Mhm.
So I'm going to have to go in here and rip all this out again, but I've
Oh.
decided it's good enough for now. And
Mhm.
it'll be the last one I get to because I've got all kinds of other areas that need to be redone. And I'll do them first because they're not scenic. And that way I can do the scenery on them once I get them done. So
And-
that, somebody have a question?
Andy, I just wanted to add, I use your system on my layout, except mine is constructed with foam board,
Uh-huh.
which makes it a little bit easier.
Oh,
I just
yeah.
got a
Sure.
groove in and use foam adhesive to secure everything, but it works wonderful.
Mhm.
And it makes operating actually easier because the only time anybody reaches in is to uncouple a car with a
Mhm.
pick.
Right.
So there's no more sleeves dragging on scenery or anything like that.
Yeah, well, that's good. I'm glad that you enjoy that, Norm.
Mhm.
So I'll stop the screen share.